My name is Harry. I'm 53. For the past 8 years, I've lived in a house that never called me by name. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. Julia came with 2 boys, Zach and Eric. I came with calloused hands, a work ethic, and a belief, a stupid one, that love could be built if you just kept showing up. Every school fundraiser, every sprained ankle, every fatherless holiday, I was there. I showed up when their real dad didn't. Again and again. I paid for braces that tightened their teeth but never loosened their contempt. I bought cleats that stomped past me without so much as a thank you. I signed permission slips, wrote checks for field trips, covered the insurance, the groceries, the rent, because Julia's ex believed in fatherhood the way ghosts believe in gravity. North Carolina summers are brutal in an auto shop. The heat sticks to your skin like guilt. But I stayed late, picked up extra shifts, ran promotions, just so her kids could afford to dream. Zach wanted to be a pilot once. Eric talked about med school. I took it all seriously. I saw in their ambition something I never got to chase myself. My future had always been a wrench in my hand and a cold beer at the end of the night. But there's could have been better. I wanted that for them. God help me, I did. Julia said she admired that about me. Said I was solid. Grounded. Said it like it was praise, but it felt more like a forecast. Something steady but forgettable. Rain on the windows, not fireworks in the sky. Still, I took it as love. In the early years, I chalked the boys' distance up to the obvious. I wasn't their dad. Fine. I didn't expect them to love me out the gate. I figured time would wear down the edges. I thought consistency mattered. I thought presence could outlast blood. I was wrong. Zach was the worst of the 2. Not because he was cruel, but because he was careful. Calculated. He knew how to smile at me in front of Julia, but the moment she left the room, the warmth would drop like a mask. I once caught him calling me the mechanic to one of his friends. Said it with a smirk like I was some background character in his personal sitcom. Eric was more blunt. He'd shrug me off, ask Julia if I had to come to his games, his recitals. Once, when he was 12, he snapped, "You don't have to pretend. We know who our real dad is." And Julia, she heard that one. She stood there and said nothing. Just walked out of the room like the silence would sort it out for her. It never did. But I kept going. Because that's what I do. I'm the kind of man who doesn't quit just because it hurts. I keep my promises even when no one else remembers them. Birthdays. Christmas. I always made sure there was enough. Enough gifts. Enough food. Enough light in the house. I'd be up at 5 a.m. grilling pancakes shaped like their initials. I'd write cards by hand. Julia would say I was spoiling them. Maybe I was. But I told myself maybe if I gave enough, they'd see me. Not love me, just see me. Then came Trevor. It started small. Stories from Julia about her amazing boss. A new marketing guy at the firm, fresh from Chicago, with sharp suits and whiter teeth than should be legal. He's really helped me step up, she'd say. He believes in my ideas. I didn't think much of it at first. I've never been the jealous type. Then Trevor started texting her on weekends. Business questions, she said. Then he started stopping by the house, just dropping something off casual, no big deal. Then there was a work trip. 3 nights in Charleston. Then dinners. Then inside jokes. Then one night I found his coat on the back of our dining chair. Julia said I was overreacting. Said I was imagining things. But the boys didn't hide it. They loved him. Trevor had stories. Trevor knew wine. Trevor bought Zach a drone for Christmas even though we'd agreed. No electronics that year. I confronted Julia and she just said, "You can't expect them to ignore someone who's being kind to them." Kind. That word sat in my mouth like spoiled meat. It's funny. I was kind too. I was the one who taught Eric to shave. I was the one who took Zach to the ER when he broke his wrist on the field. I was the one who sat in the principal's office when they got caught skipping class, defending them when their real father didn't even bother to call. But Trevor brought the shine. I brought the grind. And they wanted shine. Then 3 weeks ago, Zach called. I was at the shop, hands deep in the engine of a Ford that hadn't seen a tune-up since the Obama administration. The phone buzzed. I wiped my hands and stepped outside. He didn't waste time. "You're not coming to the wedding." No lead-in. No pause. Just the sentence like a bullet. I blinked. "What?" "It's nothing personal," he said. His voice was tight, practiced. "But Trevor earned the first dance. It wouldn't feel right having you there." Earned. That word echoed like a punch to the chest. Earned? I gave this boy my 30s. My credit. My sweat. My goddamn spine. And I was being told, calmly, politely, that another man had earned the right to be celebrated. Not just included. Celebrated. I didn't say anything at first. Just listened to the static between his words. The cowardice. "I hope you understand," he added. "Mom and I just think it's best for everyone. Everyone but me." I hung up without a word. I walked back into the garage. The Ford was still sitting there, hood open like a mouth ready to scream. I picked up the wrench, stared at the bolts, and I couldn't move. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood. They weren't erasing me quietly. They were rewriting history, and I was being deleted in real time. All the memories, the sacrifices, the thankless years. None of it mattered, because I was never really part of the story. Just a footnote, placeholder. The man before the real one showed up. Trevor had earned the first dance. I had earned the debt. I paid for the dance I wasn't invited to. That call didn't just sting. It snapped something in me. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time after Zach hung up. There was no apology, no hesitation, just cold logistics, like I was a problem they'd already solved, like I was a loose end to be cut clean. And I thought about everything I had paid for. The venue, I put the down payment on it last fall. Julia told me they'd found a place with great character, tucked away in the Blue Ridge foothills. She showed me photos like it was our plan, like I was part of this family. $9,500 deposit. My card. The catering, handpicked by Julia and Zach, organic and overpriced. For tasting sessions, none of which I was invited to. I paid the initial $5,000 to secure the date. The tuxedos, rental fees for the groom, the groomsmen, even Julia's nephew. I paid for Zach's $900 custom tuxedo outright, told him to keep it. "You'll need it for work events someday," I said. A man should own at least one good suit. The photographer, the florist, the DJ. Every one of them had my name on the invoice. They wanted me invisible but not absent. Silent but present. Not as a man, as a wallet. And when I brought it up, calmly, just hours after Zach's call, Julia didn't flinch. She was standing at the sink, rinsing lettuce for dinner, and I told her what he said, word for word. Her hands didn't stop moving. She said, "He's under a lot of pressure. Weddings are complicated." That was it. No defense. No correction. Just that smooth, practiced detachment she always used when the boys crossed a line. When they snapped or sneered or ignored me completely. She'd sigh. She'd play mediator. She'd translate their contempt into something she could stomach. That night we ate in silence. Julia acted like it hadn't happened. Like my exclusion was just another logistical hiccup in a long list of wedding headaches. Couldn't sleep. I sat at the dining table long after she went upstairs. The spreadsheets and receipts spread out in front of me. I looked at the breakdown. Venue, catering, tuxes, flowers, DJ, rehearsal dinner, even the transportation for out-of-town guests. The total? $31,700. And counting. I hadn't thought twice about it. I'd paid each invoice as it came. Quietly. Automatically. Like that's what fathers do. Like love is measured in zeros on a bank statement. But now I saw it clearly. I wasn't financing a wedding. I was financing my own disappearance. They were building a new story, one where Trevor had earned the first dance, and I was the man in the background who paid for the music but wasn't welcome to hear the song. And I realized something then. I won't pay to be disrespected. That next morning, before the sun came up, I started pulling plugs. First, the tux. I called the rental place. Zach's was custom, so non-refundable. But the rest? Cancelled. Full refund processed. Unexpected family emergency. I said. They didn't ask questions. Then the catering. I contacted the company, told them to halt service. Deposit was refundable up to 30 days out. We were at 22. The check came back in full. The DJ, the florist, the decorator, all refunded or canceled. Every one of them polite. Every one of them understanding. Apparently, family changes is a magic phrase in the wedding industry. By noon, I'd recovered $19,600. The rest sunk costs I didn't care about. This wasn't about money. It was about clarity. About finally responding to the disrespect I'd let fester for too long. I went into the office, pulled open the desk drawer where we kept the RSVP cards. Julia had insisted we print them on textured paper, real embossing, elegant script. 180 invitations. Each one cost more than the shoes I wore to work. I found our copy. No return address, just our names in silver ink. I flipped the card over and wrote on the back, "May the man who earned the first dance also pick up the check." I sealed it in an envelope, left it on the kitchen counter. Didn't say a word to Julia, just left for work. That evening, she didn't mention it either. She cooked dinner like nothing had changed. Like we weren't standing in the smoking crater of what used to be a family. She asked if I wanted sweet tea. I said no. We ate in silence. But I knew she'd seen it. Her hands trembled slightly when she poured her own drink. The next day, I started disappearing. I stopped asking about wedding plans. Stopped pretending to care what song they picked for the processional. Stopped nodding politely when Julia talked about flower arrangements or head counts. I stopped making myself useful. And for the first time in years, I realized how quiet life could be when you're not busy being used. Eric texted me that night. Said he heard from Zach that I was making things difficult. I didn't respond. The day after, Julia cornered me in the hallway. Asked if we could have a real conversation. I told her I'd already said what I needed to say. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Like the man who had carried her kids, her debts, her dreams, was suddenly inconvenient. "You're doing this out of spite," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm doing this out of clarity." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She turned away. The next week, the dominoes started falling. They lost the venue. Couldn't afford to rebook in time. The new one was a community center with folding chairs and bad lighting. The florist backed out. The DJ was replaced with a Spotify playlist. They trimmed the guest list by half. Word got around. Mutual friends texted me quietly. Said the wedding had taken a turn. Asked if everything was okay. I didn't explain. Didn't complain. Just said, plans change. But deep down I knew this wasn't just a change of plans. This was the cost of truth. For years, I had been the silent partner in a family that wanted my money, not my presence. My reliability, not my humanity. I had allowed them to walk over me because I thought love meant patience, endurance, sacrifice. But love without respect is a leash. And I had finally slipped mine. I started sleeping through the night again. For the first time in months, I wasn't waking up with tension in my chest. I wasn't checking my phone every morning for more wedding updates. I wasn't grinding my teeth. I was breathing. Felt like guilt at first, that freedom. Like I was abandoning something I'd promised to protect. But no, you can't abandon people who've already cast you out. You can't betray a bond that's been broken behind your back. All I did was take back what was mine. My money, my time, my peace. A week before the wedding, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo, Zach and Julia, dancing. Not smiling. Not laughing. Just standing close. Zach's hand on her shoulder. Her face strained. On the back, in Zach's handwriting, I wanted to believe it was simple. But you weren't just a sponsor. You were the only dad I had. That line sat in my chest like an anchor. Too late. Too damn late. You don't get to write someone out of your life and then beg for their presence in the footnotes. You don't get to erase a man and then cry when the ink starts to run dry. 2 days later, Eric texted. Trevor left. Said the wedding debt isn't his problem. And Julia? Julia messaged me at 11:42 p.m. You were right. I ruined what we built. I just don't know how to fix it. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I locked my phone and went to bed. Some bridges burn themselves. Some doors lock from the inside. And this time, I'm not the one standing outside. They wanted the dance. I sent them the bill. I stopped checking my messages. For the first time in 8 years, I let the phone ring without answering. Let the texts pile up without reading. Let the apologies, real or rehearsed, dissolve into the silence they deserved. Zach tried once more the day after the wedding. Said he was sorry for how things happened. Not what he said. Not what he did. Just how things happened. As if betrayal were a logistical error. A scheduling conflict. An email that ended up in the spam folder. I read the message once. Deleted it. That's the thing no one tells you. When you stop giving, they don't remember what you gave. They only remember that you stopped. And they call it cruelty. What I did wasn't cruel. Cruel was being told I wasn't part of the family, then being expected to foot the bill anyway. Cruel was sitting across from Julia while she defended the decision to exclude me. Her hands trembling not with guilt, but inconvenience. Cruel was silence used like a we*p*n. And now they were living in it. Through mutual friends, I heard things. Zach and his wife. Can't remember her name, she never spoke to me directly. Had moved in with her parents. Couldn't afford the apartment they'd signed for after the wedding. The deposit was non-refundable. They blamed the florist, the DJ, the unforeseen costs. Never themselves. Eric dropped out of school for a semester. Said he needed time to regroup. Translation. No one left to pay the tuition. Julia asked if I'd consider helping. Not to forgive, not to return, just help. Temporarily. She called it a pause in support. Like this was a business arrangement. Like the wound could be wrapped in a spreadsheet and stapled shut. I didn't reply. I had nothing left to give. Not because I was bitter, but because I was finally honest. And once you taste the freedom of honesty, you can't go back to pretending. I disappeared. Not physically, I still lived in the same house. Still parked in the same driveway. Still paid for the water, the electricity, the mortgage. But I was gone in every way that mattered. Emotionally bankrupt. And they noticed. It started with Julia. She'd linger in doorways more often. Ask if I was okay. Offer coffee in the morning. She smiled too much. Her eyes didn't match. She was trying. I'll give her that. But trying without accountability is just decoration. One night, she asked if I wanted to talk. We sat in the living room. Same couch where we'd once held hands while the boys opened Christmas gifts. Same rug where Eric spilled soda during movie night and I cleaned it up without a word. She said, I didn't know Zach was going to say that. I looked at her. You knew what he thought. You just didn't stop him from saying it. She flinched. You've always been there, she said, her voice soft. More than his dad. More than I ever expected. And yet, I said, when it mattered, you let another man stand in my place. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. I built this life. I paid the dues. I endured the disrespect. And when the moment came to stand up for me, you sat down. Tears welled in her eyes. He's just a kid, she whispered. No, I said. He's a man. A man who made a choice. Just like you. She didn't respond. That night, I moved my things to the guest room. It wasn't symbolic. It was logistical. Just like Zach's wedding. Just like the financial betrayal I'd endured for years. If they could make cold decisions, so could I. A week passed. Eric knocked on the garage door one afternoon. I was rebuilding an old Honda. Sweat in my eyes, grease in my fingernails. He stood there, hands in his pockets, face slack with something between shame and obligation. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. I kept working. He lingered. I didn't think it was that serious. I thought you knew we were just figuring things out. I paused, looked up. You told me I wasn't your father. Repeatedly, publicly, that I had no say, no role, no value. You said it with your words. You said it with your silence. You said it with your mother. And now that the checks have stopped, you're here. His face twisted. That's not fair. I stood up. Fair. I said, my voice calm, low. You want fair? Fair is being raised by a man who fed you, clothed you, taught you how to change a tire, paid for your therapy, and didn't ask for anything but a seat at the table. And you decided I wasn't worth that. He didn't reply. I'm not angry, I said, but I'm done. That's the difference. He left without saying goodbye. 2 nights later, Julia tried again. We can go to counseling, she said. We can work through this. I laughed. Not cruelly, but genuinely, like someone realizing too late that the damage wasn't just deep. It was ancient. You want to fix this now? Her eyes begged for softness, for mercy. But mercy without justice is manipulation. I told her the truth. For years, I let you all treat me like I was temporary, like I was disposable. I swallowed the slights. I ignored the omissions. I kept giving because I thought one day you'd see me, not thank me, just see me. And the moment that could have happened, the moment you could have said, Harry, you matter. You handed the mic to Trevor. Her voice broke. I didn't think it would hurt you this much. Then you never knew me at all. The next morning I packed a bag, left the house with no destination, just direction. I didn't slam the door, didn't leave a note, didn't threaten anything. I simply walked away, like a man who finally understood that absence can be louder than presence. I stayed with a friend, rented a room above his shop, ate cheap takeout and listened to the quiet. And you know what? Felt good. Not peaceful, not joyful, but clean, like breathing air without the scent of someone else's expectation in it. They called. Of course they did. First Julia, then Eric, then silence. Zach never called. Not once. And that, more than anything, told me what I needed to know. He wasn't sorry. Not really. Not for the words. Not for the dance. Not for the deletion. He was sorry the consequences caught up. Sorry the foundation cracked when he pulled the wrong brick. But not sorry he struck the match. A month passed. Then another. I went back to the house one afternoon. Not to return, just to retrieve what was mine. Tools, books, a few personal things. Julia wasn't home. Eric was. He opened the door. You're coming back? He asked. No, I said. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected it. Like part of him knew this was permanent. Before I left, he asked one final question. Was it really that bad? I stopped at the door. No, I said. It was worse. Then I left. Later that week, Julia sent one more message. I miss the man who used to fix everything. And I replied, he's gone. You replaced him with someone shinier. You just didn't expect him to rust. No more texts came. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was earned. They wanted the dance. They got it. I just made sure the bill came due. They chose the dance. I chose the door. There's something strange about silence after years of noise. At first, it feels like punishment, like sitting in the aftermath of a storm, waiting for the next one to hit. But then you realize the thunder was never coming back. You realize it wasn't weather. It was warning. It was the sound of something cracking long before it collapsed. And now it's quiet. The shop's been slower these days. I don't mind. I take my time with each car. Hands still know what they're doing. Oil under the nails. The smell of rubber and metal. It's honest work. Never lied to me. Never asked for my wallet and spat in my face after. That's more than I can say for the family I tried to build. Julia still lives in the house. I gave it to her. Not as a gift, as a severance. Clean break. Let her keep the walls we painted together, the rooms I wired myself, the kitchen I rebuilt from scratch after that leak no one else noticed. She didn't fight me. Didn't ask me to stay this time. Maybe she finally understood that a man who disappears quietly is never coming back with a bang. Eric dropped out for good. Got a job at a gym. Says he's taking time to find himself. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. That's no longer my responsibility. Zach? He's still married. Still working 2 jobs to pay off the credit card debt from the wedding I stopped funding. His in-laws don't like him much. Turns out they were expecting the kind of wedding you only get when a silent man bleeds behind the curtain. Trevor vanished. Left Julia with vague texts and a pile of invoices. "It's not my problem," he said. He was right. It wasn't. It was hers. Hers and Zach's and Eric's. I was done solving problems that weren't mine. Funny how that works. When you finally put the weight down, you realize how long you've been limping. The truth? I was never the father. Not in name. Not in title. Not in their hearts. But I was the man. I was the man who stayed. Who showed up. Who paid the bills they didn't know existed. Who remembered their allergies. Who bought the cleats. Who stood in the back of the gym during practices, clapping even when they didn't look my way. I was the man who learned to make their favorite meals. Who skipped buying new tires for his own truck so the boys could go on a school trip. Who made dentist appointments. Who waited outside therapy sessions and never asked what was said inside. I was the man who stood between them and the cliff edge more times than they'll ever know. And that man? He's gone. Not dead. Not bitter. Just gone. Like smoke after a fire. Like breath held too long. Julia asked me, once, if I'd ever forgive them. I told her forgiveness isn't the same as return. That I'd forgiven her the moment I left. That holding on to anger is just another form of attachment. And I had no attachments left. Not to them. Not anymore. People tell you to love unconditionally. That it's noble. That it's the highest form of grace. They don't tell you what it costs. They don't mention that unconditional love becomes a cage when respect isn't part of the deal. That patience without acknowledgement becomes servitude. That giving without limit invites erasure. And they never tell you the hardest part. That the people you break yourself for will never notice until you stop breaking. They noticed. Too late. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. I don't replay the words that cut me. I've learned not to dwell in rooms I was never welcome in. But I'll say this. When Zach said I wasn't invited because Trevor earned the first dance, what he really meant was, we rewrote the story without you, and we thought you'd still fund the ending. And maybe I would have once, but not now. Because love without respect is just manipulation. Because presence without acknowledgement is just background noise. Because you don't erase a man and expect his wallet to remain open. You don't hand someone else the first dance and expect the man who raised you to quietly pay for the song. That's not family. That's theft. So now I sit here, alone, but whole. I don't have a family photo on the mantle. I don't have Father's Day cards. I don't get called Dad. But I have something else. Peace. And peace is louder than applause from people who never clapped before. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I wrong to stop paying for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend? Was I wrong to let the silence speak when words had failed me for years? Was I wrong to walk away from a house that used my labor, my loyalty, my love, and offered contempt in return? Or did I finally teach them the lesson they refused to learn? That when you rewrite the story, you better be ready to cover the cost. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you've ever been replaced, erased, or used, hit that like button and subscribe. This is Reddit Visuals, and we don't let disrespect slide.